Your view of the important things are very complete. They're almost like the circle, the meshing of the unseen world and the world that we experience while we're here in our bodies. It's neat. It's almost a little too neat for me, but I love the fact that while any one person's thinking may not be precisely or even mildly in line with any existing religion, you can be a very spiritual person and still have an intuitive idea that is your idea of what's actually going on. I think mine is very flexible. It's like when I get new information that comes from a scientific source or historians who've studied ancient civilizations, sometimes I feel that that's not accurate information, and sometimes I think I feel, it's really a feeling thing. It's like something in the pit of your stomach tells you that this is correct. And I always leave a lot of room for changing my view, because I think that's essential for me, to always be open to a new way of experiencing something I had already decided was this way or that way, or another understanding.
Right. Well, that's. Let me say that my thinking may seem very clean, but that's because I'm explaining it. For example, I know in conversations with you, when I've asked you to explain things, you don't have anything. You can't explain it. You're just lost for words. So part of the neatness of the explanations come from the fact that I have to explain it. I have to explain myself. So I've done some thinking about it. I've written books on it. So it's something that I've taken. However, that in terms, if you were to take just as an example about the physical world and the non-physical world, about that boundary and border, it's very messy, very messy, and that the kind of worldview you have when you say, well, there's this world and there's that world, it's a mess in between. But like all creation, boundaries, it's a mess, You have, and in fact, the soul is a good example. That part of us which is traversing both, which is both here and which is both there, and constantly informing us of stuff. That's how we would know. We're here. We're not in the other world. We know that because we know people who have gone there. Those people are usually called shamans, the Black Elk or Jesus or Moses, who essentially you would say to take lucid waking dreams, if you want to think of it that way, where in fact you enter the world of the unconscious and you actually move through it, but we're sitting here. So that kind of boundary, and as to what it's like, is absolutely, I have no idea. All I know is what has appeared to me over time, so in fact I've adjusted my thing. I've never seen ghosts, for example. I've never seen a ghost. I've seen one spiritual entity, but that was a vision, just once. In terms of voices, I've heard voices often in terms of high creativity or at times of great stress. But in terms of people who are highly psychic, who are constantly being flooded with information from the other world, and it often bewilders them, it beats them down because it's so disorderly. Mine have been very few and far between. So that my sense of it is that unless you go into the other world, unless you attempt some kind of lucid dreaming or some kind of entry, some kind of shamanic entry into the world, that the appearances of the other world and this world are mild. they could be stupendous, a huge light, okay, or like the Virgin of Guadalupe, whatever you want to call it, you know, or whatever you want to call it. A UFO, what happens to be a light, an abduction, where you go into some place. It's a psychic event. It's not an hallucination. It's an event that has a reality to it as compelling as this. It takes over. We know that it is a psychic event, but there's nothing hallucinatory about it. It's something that we are compelled to enter and to follow through. Just like any psychic event is compelling, we have to listen to or we have to obey what is taking place. That's the sense we have of higher intelligence, in which people come back, well, it has to be from Planet X because they're smarter than us. Well, Planet X isn't here, you know. Where the psychic world actually resides, whether it's within us or beyond us, nobody's been able to say since the beginning of time. But we know that it has, we can know things that are beyond our physical boundaries. Jung showed this. There's certain kind of patterns and ways of knowing that will appear from the collective unconscious, the memories of the human race since the beginning of time. And we know from speaking to people, even the friends, that they can know things that we shouldn't be able to know. We are bounded in space and time. Science tells us this is us. All we know is what's in front of us or what's been told to us or proven, but yet there are people who know things. We can call them prophets, or you can call them whatever you want to say, but they have an insight into that world. So how to explain that, I just say, is that there's something unknowable, there's a dreaming taking place, and there are two appearances of the dreaming. There's one is what we call the psychic world, the unknown world, the other world, and the other is this entire world that we live in, which is the universe that goes on for billions and billions of millions and trillions of stars and down to the smallest insect. That's the known world. It's the unknowable world is that world that is essentially, I see it as a kind of buffer world between ourselves and the source of the dreaming. Because that you can't comprehend. That would be like when the Jews say to Moses, we can't go up and look at God like you can. You have to go up. It's killing us. We're afraid. So Moses goes up to talk to God. That's when you're getting pretty close to the unknowable, that stage of the game. He comes back he's been transfigured, basically show the rays of light, but what happens, he has achieved a new kind of knowing. He's been through a change in consciousness, basically, Moses has. So it comes down from the mountain. This is how we have to live. Here's the rules, Same thing happens to Buddha, and the same thing in some way happens to Jesus, but slightly differently. So the world of the unknowable can take many forms, and one of the forms that I think it's taking today, and nobody can comprehend because nobody knows it exists, or they've forgotten, or they don't want to think about it, or it doesn't exist in the scientific world, is that the unconscious part of us, our unconscious minds are capable of producing stupendous worlds, visions for us. That are as spellbinding as anything in this reality that we have here today. It's a real world of a higher order that we enter.
When I was very sick and in a foreign country and didn't have any support system there at all, a little song would run through my head that over and over again, and it was the old row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream. And I began to move into that way of thinking more and more, like this world, this material world was an illusion, and the other world was more real. And I still feel that way. It's I don't know how many other people feel that way. I don't know if you feel that way quite. I think not. That you think of...
I don't spend that much time in the other world.
No, you don't. You don't spend as much time as I do. No.
So the thing I can say is that in fact its appearances have been stunning. Mm-hmm. So the way that I consciously perceive the visions or the voices is coming from a superior intelligence.
Yes, I do too.
And they grab you, you know?
And funnier. They're funnier than I am, and I'm pretty funny. And they're brighter than I am, and I'm not unbright. It is, and they feel things that, in addition to what I might feel, you know, they have a deeper and broader empathy with everything, I would say, every living thing.
Well, I
or
wouldn't
not
disagree with
living
you on
thing.
that. I would say that in terms of your life as a psychic, that you go into it as a psychic. My commerce with that world takes place either in the very limited voices and visions I have, or it takes place almost on an everyday basis through poetry. Because the type of poetry I'm doing is coming directly from the unconscious, and I'm not filtering it, I'm speaking it out, not writing it down. There's no conscious effort. It either goes up in the clouds or it's recorded somewhere. And that was the original function of poetry, was to bring the contents of the unconscious, that wisdom and that beauty and that knowing, that the unconscious, what Plato called the ideal forms, or the other world, or what Jung called the archetypes. So basically how we know something is beautiful or true. That's what he proved. Plato proved with the Socratic dialogues, is that we can never pin down what truth means. Therefore, that's where Socrates drives everybody crazy. Well, how about this? How about this? How about this? Socrates won't kill you, which they eventually did kill him. He was just driving him crazy. But of course, Plato's Socrates is like completely bananas, whereas in a sense that he seems much more orderly, whereas he was just a pain in the ass, Socrates, in the Greek world, according to some writers. I.F. Stone, he's just a real pain in the ass, you know. So he makes him a little bit more kind of a kind of guru kind of guy, but still he was questioning everything. So, and what Plato wanted to show indirectly was that the only way we know something is true is we have something inside us, and we don't know what that is. Whether it exists outside us or inside us, it is not in our conscious world. So that your perceptions of the other world or the non-physical world is something that is of a higher order, is something that in fact people have felt since the beginning of time. People who have no experience with it don't. I know that all of the great things that I've done in poetry or in art come from that world. Justin by himself was a pretty dull boy. And in fact, some of
Say that.
well, I'm funny, but you know, the poems are something else, you know.
They are.
So when someone came to me once and said, you know, I just read some of your, this was many years ago, he said, your prose is horrible, how can you write such good poetry? I said, well, I don't write the poetry, it writes itself, you know. And he was right. So I had to work many years to improve my prose. It was very hard. Because once you get that hook into the other world, then it just writes itself, which is what you want it to do. So there comes the superior beauty in the knowing about things of the heart. It's not going to tell you anything about the book of knowledge. There's always some visionary who goes into the other world. This happens all the time, and he says, and I've been told by the guides that I will soon see the book of knowledge. It's there, and they're going to bring me to it. And then he reports back again. And then he gets to the book of knowledge, and he can't read it. Because the other world isn't a world of facts. It isn't a world of stories. It's a world of feelings. You just can't read it. It's there, the book, and you turn the pages. They're two different worlds. You have to take one for what it is and what for this is. So the idea is to live in both worlds. And what I believe that these events are these circles for completeness that we're seeing, these oblong, these eggs, these things that are being born, these triangles, whatever, is the way that and as spacecraft, that's how we're interpreting them, because we don't know anything about the heavens, about the unconscious. They're announcing the coming of a new completeness, a new roundness. And that roundness will be that the unconscious will become open to us again. Not as it was in pre-literate times where it was overpowering, but in terms of it's a return to intuition, it's a return to female thinking. Balancing it. You have to bring the male and female sides of us into, that doesn't mean we're going to wear lipstick and stuff. It means that we're going to allow our intuitive side to be more highly developed and not just shut it off and go watch a ball game for men. Women have reached a pretty good stage of male thinking that in fact, if you just go into a large corporation, which I would sometimes do, And it's like all the women have lost their complete senses. They're all acting like men. They're bitching, hey, sit down, shut up. You know, all of those, let's get on the bus and ride to success and all this crap, all the talk, you know. I just couldn't believe it. What's happening? So they've kind of caught up. So, you know, but in fact, a lot of women have more sense in that, but, you know, they've caught on to the male logical only view. They've gone as far as they want to go, I think, but it's the men have to catch up.